Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Culture and People Cast. Today we have Trav Walkowski. Trav, you and I have been talking online, but in a few sentences, would you tell us who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so I'm an organizational psychologist. I help build HR strategies informed by people analytics and always have, the employee and the company in mind rather than one or the other.
Yes, I love that. And so jealous of your org psych background. I like play one in my day job, but I don't officially have the certification in that. So because you have influenced people in culture for so long and in quite a few ways, honestly, if people check out your LinkedIn profile, what is your favorite part of the people in culture work?
Well, it's the strategy, which is kind of a bad answer because it's that involves so much. But really, it's if I break it down into two things, it's the employee experience and then the comp equity total reward side. So not the administration of it, but the strategy of it.
Yes.
So on the comp side, I love digging into the market data, and figuring out the exact strategy for your company to pay people appropriately. And then on the experience side, anything from engagement to team engineering, making sure we've got the right people in the right seats to do the right work that they can.
Oh my gosh. And it sounds like you're a data geek like me. And I wasn't always that way. I think it probably was about 10 plus years ago where I finally understood what a great, because my top skills are strategic thinking and futuristic thinking. So I'm already there, but I need the data to convince people like where we need to go. And I realized what an effective tool it is. And now I'm like, yes, give me all the data.
Yeah, same.
That's great. That's great. So when we think about, you talked about employee experience, you talked about that total reward strategy, all that plays into engagement, right? Which engagement plays into performance.
Right.
I'm hearing from a lot of leaders that engaging talent is a challenge. What are your thoughts?
It is definitely a challenge. It's especially in COVID times. We've seen a lot of struggle because, of course, you've got folks that really thrive in that office environment and having the vibe to go with, and they don't have that at home. But I think it's actually pretty simple to engage people. If you have people that are in a job that they thrive in, and you empower them to do their work without micromanaging them, and you trust them, they will inherently be engaged. But trust has to be a two-way street. They have to trust you as either their manager or the organization, really both.
Yeah.
And then the organization and their manager has to trust them because nobody can work well if they're being hovered upon.
Yes. God, what was that movie about the circle of trust with that crazy movie with Robert De Niro? Do you remember that? Meet the Parents, where we talk about the circle of trust? Like, you got to be in the circle of trust. I love it. I think the circle of trust is really important. And when you think about empowerment, Trav, I've been thinking about this recently, that I actually believe that has risen this year, because naturally when we are disconnected from the physical workplace, our autonomy goes up, hopefully, right? Hopefully we're not being micromanaged via like an electronic parent or anything. But do you agree?
In some cases, yes.
Yeah.
In some cases it's worse,
there
are companies now that are looking at things like screen time, and you've got the people that are attaching their mouse to a oscillating fan so it looks like they're active.
Oh my gosh.
You've got companies who have the security policy in place so their laptop locks automatically after really short time, which causes this tremendous anxiety about having to be constantly active and typing, which of course doesn't work in real life, because if you're in a meeting, you might not be moving your mouse or typing, or if you're thinking about something, you need that space to just say, okay, let me think about this without having to worry about, oh my gosh, now it looks like I'm not active and not working.
Yes.
So there's both sides of the spectrum, but hopefully more companies will shift to the trust side, now that they understand that, we've got the data to prove that working at home is good. And you can be even more productive, especially for those of us that are introverts. It's awesome not having all the office noise. And, like for me, I'm always working with super confidential data.
Yeah.
So if I'm in an office setting, I, literally have to have walls up because I can't have people seeing my screen.
Right.
here, I know for a fact nobody's behind me, so I'm good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So as we think about the opposite of some of those micromanaging, let's call them behaviors that we just talked about, what is some tactical advice that you have for either the leader employee who are listening to this today, Trav, who say like, yeah, I want to evolve our culture here at work. I want to improve our people practices. What's some tactical things that they could implement tomorrow?
I think number one is figuring out if there's a lack of trust, why that is, and then solving that issue. And a lot of times it really just comes down to inexperienced managers. So maybe throw together a training program that says, hey, we're hiring these people to do their job, so let them. And I mean, that's kind of my whole management and leadership philosophy is to let things be. If I have people on my team, I have them on my team because I trust them, and I know they know what they need to do. And in many cases, I know they know more than me in certain areas. So I have to trust them.
Yeah.
So if there's that lack of trust, why is that? And if you can solve that issue, or at least throw some content at it, things will get better. And I mean, it takes time. If you've got micromanagers or decision by committee, those types of environments, that's not going to change overnight. But if you can incentivize the behaviors that support trust and, de-incentivize, disincentivize, what's the word? I don't know. Sort of those bad management tactics, then things will shift. You just have to let it work. And, it takes quite a while. Of course, it depends on your org size and level of managers and how many levels you have, but that's the big philosophy. The other thing I think is we need to move away from being so hierarchical. The companies that are really, really doing amazingly well are the ones that are super flat. Some of them have no job titles, and they let people focus on things that they're interested in. Because if they're interested, they're going to be engaged and they're going to do great work and they're going to be more dedicated to that work. So I think something that any company can implement is something called the gig marketplace. So instead of focusing on, this is your title, you're doing this, put all the things that need to be done into a spreadsheet or something and let people self-congregate and figure out, if I'm in HR, maybe I can still help on an engineering project. I don't have a engineering degree, but I use products, I use technology. So there's some insights I can give there, even though it's not my expertise. So let me, let me play and have fun. And
that's expanding our zone of impact, right? Like we don't have to stay, the worst advice, right? Some of the worst advice, stay in your lane, right? Like there should be no lanes. And yes, we have an obligation to the job I was hired for and the job description, et cetera, et cetera. But like, what if we went for an 80-20, 70-30, right? Where, most of the time, yes, we can do that, but a good amount of time that could inspire us would be spent on some of those things. And I did it when I was in HR. I created a program for productivity and efficiency. That's not something that typically comes out of HR, right? But we saw a problem. So we put the program together and it saved millions of dollars and thousands of hours across the organization because we stepped into an area that was out of the lane.
Right.
Yeah. Love it, Trav. So let's do some quick call outs. Are there other people that are doing great work in the ring? Maybe even potential guests for the show?
Well, let's see. So, of course, I follow sort of the superstar of the world, which is Josh Bersin.
Yeah.
I love everything he puts out. I actually have his Simply Irresistible organization on the wall.
Yeah.
Who else? I don't know. I really don't focus a whole lot on what's happening or who's doing things. I focus on the ideas.
Yeah.
So
Awesome.
sorry,
Awesome. That's okay. Well, speaking of ideas, like what are some of your favorite resources? So we know Josh Bersin, we will hook to him as a resource for people to follow. Don't think he's going to be a guest on the show, but you never know. What about books or podcasts that have evolved your own thinking in terms of culture and people?
Yeah, so I really like to focus actually on just the random articles that people are writing, because people, especially if they're not technically in a thought leader space,
Mm-hmm.
they actually have really good ideas. Especially if they're the ones doing the work, they're going to know more than anybody else.
Yeah, sure.
So I'm in a few Slack channels that have channels for articles or humble brags or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I love to look to those.
Good.
That's pretty much it. I've got tons of textbooks from grad school, and I still do reference them.
Me too.
Yeah, but I certainly wouldn't recommend anyone go out and buy them. But especially
now we have Google. We have Google
exactly.
that can help people, right?
But there's content everywhere. I know, like my personal goal for the year was to do something once a month that was in that thought leadership space, whether that was a podcast or an article or something. Good. So if you look at my stuff on Medium, I've got a couple posts out there that talk about engagement and comp and the stuff that I'm passionate about. So yeah, there's tons of resources, but I think don't focus on one person.
No, yeah.
Focus on ideas. Yeah. So for example, one of the, well, it used to be controversial, I think it's less controversial now, ideas that I subscribe to is nationalized comp. So instead of doing geo-based comp, national.
You think we're heading there maybe, huh?
Well, I'm sorry?
Do you think we're heading there now?
Absolutely. And I think, just tactically, at first there's going to be then really high rates because we're going to have to be focused on New York and San Francisco rates, even if you're here in Milwaukee.
Right.
But that'll flatten. And I just think that's, like, to me, it's a no-brainer. Because of course, if you're asking somebody to do this job, who cares where they live?
Right.
But anyway, if that's an idea that you like, I've got content on that. I've got more coming out.
Right? Yeah. Well, we will make sure, Trav, to link to your Medium account so that people can follow along on your articles too. And I appreciate you being a guest today, but more than that, I appreciate you affecting change in the world of work for our people and culture and for all you do for that. So thank you for being here today.
Well, thank you.
All right, guys, peace and progress.